And now, the final session. Thanks to the G20 Sherpa Ambassador Mattiolo to be with us. This is the Troika session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everybody for being here, and thank you for inviting me to moderate this session. My name is Marco Valerio Loprete. I'm a journalist from TG1, so the Italian public television. I've been following this 3 days works, either online or through the news agencies, and I have to thank you, first of all, for the quantity and quality of the information you shared with the public throughout the world, and also for the inspiring stories of activism throughout these 3 days. So talking about competence and activism, I will start by presenting our speakers here on stage. On the far right, Salma Rashid. She's Chief Advocacy Officer of Al-Nada Society, a non-profit organization established in Saudi Arabia in the 60s that promotes and advocates empowering women socially and economically, but also, most of all, she's Saudi Arabia Women 20 head delegation. Then Jessica Wijaja, she's founder of the Grander Center International, and that is a humanitarian diplomacy organization in Jakarta, Indonesia, and she's also head of the delegation of Indonesia for Women 20. Martina Rogato, she's, of course, we've heard her this morning in the welcoming session because she's with the Women 20 Italy Sherpa. She's also a professor, researcher, and an activist in human rights. And then, again, as I said before, thank you here for Ambassador Mattiolo, and he's an ambassador currently. He's also diplomatic advisor to Prime Minister Mario Draghi, and for us today is also and mainly G20 Sherpa for Italy. Ambassador Mattiolo has been a diplomat since 1981, and he's been head of the mission in Tel Aviv, Ankara, Berlin, among many other things. So I've heard, the title of the session is The Way Forward, the Women 20 Troika and the Women 20 Communique Delivery, and we will get there at the end of this panel. And I need to say that in Italian and European media, the term Troika in the last years, at least from the financial crisis in 2009, has been used to refer to a decision group formed by the European Commission, the ECB, and the IMF throughout the financial crisis, the harsh times of the financial crisis. And the debate, of course, it's open on the legacy of the Troika, but in everybody's mind, at least in Italy, the term Troika is associated with strict conditionality and harsh negotiation with governments. Now, of course, the Troika of women we have here has nothing to do with the Troika at the European level. They don't care only about economic policies. They've been here. They're not representatives of governments or international organizations. They are representatives of civil society. But I'm sure that they, as the most well-known Troika, will make their voice heard by the national governments. And so national governments, represented here for us by Ambassador Mattiolo, should pay attention also to this new Troika. In the next 40 minutes of our talk, I hope the W20 Troika we have represented here will show one more time the strength of their arguments. And then Ambassador Mattiolo will help us in understanding which way the recommendations from Women 20 will be put into force also at the government level. So let me start with a question to Salma Rashid. Again, Saudi Arabia W20 head of delegation. Your Women 20 presidency last year was original in many respects, but of course was also the presidency that was struck by the pandemic at the beginning of 2020. So in your final communique last year, you provided a set of recommendations to underscore the key measures to foster an economic recovery that included also the role of women. So my first question is, I would like to have your initial assessment on this recovery. Do you think that the current recovery is being based on a principle of inclusiveness, as you called it in the communiqué last year, or are gender inequalities being exacerbated through the recovery?
Thank you very much, Marco, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to first start by congratulating the W20 Italy Secretariat, Dr. Linda Laura Sabadini, Martina, the team, and the W20 international delegates for another year of hard work. The work of W20 does not end with a presidency. It's a continued process, and maybe if we take one step back before talking about last year, it's the best way to describe the W20 or the G20 process is a train that passes through each presidency, and it's on each presidency to ensure that this train is, we pick it up from previous presidencies and make sure that we carry forward the issues that have been discussed since the inception of W20 in 2015 in Turkey, and then how can we carry forward the issues that we care about and collectively as W20 International have seen as the most important topics for women. So before answering your question, maybe I'd like to take just a few steps back. One can argue that the pandemic has shown us that had the world enacted on the W20 recommendations of past years, maybe we would not have seen the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on women today. The pandemic, we could have had, I would like to argue that we could have avoided many of the things that we're dealing with today. The W20, or this year in our communique, we describe the world at the epicenter of an epochal process, the climate crisis, pandemic crisis, and technological revolution. And I think if we were to enact the recommendations since the 2015, so it's not only the last year, but since 2015, if we enacted upon these recommendations, I can guarantee that we would accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and really shift the world onto a sustainable and resilient path. Since the inception of W20, we've always focused on three main pillars: labor, financial, digital, and every year we've introduced a new topic. Last year we focused on inclusive decision-making because we really believe that this was at the forefront of really ensuring women's economic empowerment. But we had to pivot. So because of the pandemic, 3 months into our presidency, we were hit by the pandemic, and we had to really be agile and adapt and adjust our work, and I'd like to thank once again the W20 delegates across the G20 for their flexibility and their hard work throughout last year and this year, because even before the research and before the data came in, it was very clear that women will be disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, because we knew before the research came out. We knew that women bear the brunt of care, whether it's elderly or child care. We knew women were disproportionately represented in sectors that were hit, or the first hit by the pandemic, whether it's tourism, hospitality, and also at the front line of combating the pandemic. Now, last year, we put 2 sets of recommendations. One was really urgent recommendations to really mitigate the impact of the pandemic. And then the second set was a longer-term recommendations to achieve the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But back to your question, Marco, it hasn't been 6 months. And that's the thing what I started with my remarks, that the work does not end with the presidency, and we're far from achieving what we hoped to achieve last year, and we hope that this communiqué that will be launched later today will be also, reiterate the main messages that were since 2015, the Turkish presidency, and moving on to China, Germany, Japan, Argentina, and Saudi. It's really, we still stand where we are: women's entrepreneurship, women's labor participation, digital, and in all different areas. So I think we're still far from it, but we're seeing important steps in the right direction.
Okay, thank you, Selma. And I like to pick up on this metaphor of the train. So next stop is Italy after Saudi Arabia, and I give the floor to Martina Rogato. But the goals were set even before 2015. I mean, I would say the first conference, international conference, where we had concrete objectives on women empowerment was maybe Beijing 1995. So we're talking about 26 years ago now. And I'm quoting some data that show that we're still back. I mean, in the past, for example, the gap in labor market participation between men and women have remained stable over the past 2 decades and stands at 31 percentage points. Women are paid, in average, of course, throughout the world, 16% less than men, and only 1 in 4 managers is a woman. 31% of women aged 15 to 24 is not studying, working, or participating in any training activities. So these are data that are staying there even if goals and objectives were posed already in 1995, Martina. So on top of goodwill and great sounding declarations, I ask you if there isn't any more need, any pressing need for more accountability in this kind of fora and vis-a-vis the government.
Thank you so much, Marco Valerio. Salam alaikum, buongiorno, slamapaki. According to the World Economic Forum, we need plus 200 years to achieve gender equality. So my answer would be yes, we need more accountability. This is the main reason why, receiving the legacy of the past presidency this year, we confirmed at the top of our communiqué our document of policy recommendation addressed to governments, but also private sector, the importance of a few cross-cutting priorities. The first one is related to the collection of gender disaggregated data. This is the first step towards gender equality. We need data, gender-sensitive data. Secondly, concerning, let's say, accountability, is very important when governments deliver a law, a regulation, but also a company decide to launch an internal regulation or a policy to develop ex-ante impact assessment based on gender. I'm very happy that this year our presidency, G20 presidency, decided to focus on people, planet, prosperity, that are the 3 dimensions of sustainability. And sustainability means developing an approach that do not adversely impact on business and on human rights. So accountability is the key for empowerment.
Okay. Well, even this morning by Chair Linda Laura Sabatini was quoted one of the main targets of the Women 20 the Italian presidency this year, that is violence, of course, combating violence against women and especially girls. This is just one, maybe, of the new aspects of this communiqué this year. More in general, I ask you, what are the priorities, Martina, of the Italian Women 20 and the new additions that are more relevant to you?
Sure, thank you so much. We identified, together with the civil society organization of the 20 countries, 5 main priorities. We received the legacy of the past presidencies related to digital, digital gender parity, labor and finance entrepreneurship. Then we inserted 2 new topics inside to the Women 20 that are environmental sustainability, because of the people, planet, prosperity approach, and finally, violence against women and girls, considered as a top priority of the Women 20 presidency. As you mentioned, girls are the key actors, the fundamental actors to restart a new world, a new post-pandemic world, also in terms of cultural changes. Our approach is to stay focused on the importance of creating a strong cultural change transition to avoid overpassing gender stereotypes, also concerning violence and the over-mentioning topics. So cultural changes is the key. And we are very happy we arranged a special panel with UNICEF, Save the Children, Terre des Hommes to focus on the importance of give the chance to the world, to the G20 members to listen directly the voices of girls and children. Concerning sustainability, let me add, this has been a revolution of the Italian presidencies in the sense that it's very important to not miss the opportunity of the sustainability in terms of job creation. We are very focused on the importance of increased female occupation, quality job for all women, and sustainability together with digital are the key. It's my pleasure to share with all of you that a few hours ago at 2 p.m. we reached consensus on the communiqué, and this night you will be able to read all of our priorities.
Okay, now the train will keep going, and next year it will touch on Indonesia. So my next question is to Jessica Wijaja. Let me ask you, which are the future challenges and expectations you have for Women 20 in 2022, and how can civil society be even more heard by governments for all these issues we've been touching on these 3 days?
Okay. So thank you very much for the opportunity today. So I would like to take this time to thank all the W20 Italian team for arranging this amazing summit and wonderful summit, because we are in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in Italy it still is post-COVID-19 pandemic era. But in Indonesia, we're still in the middle of COVID-19 pandemic, and all the delegations flew here just to have a meeting of W20 Summit. I think it is one of a kind W20 Summit, and it's very precious. And I would like to thank W20 Chair, Dr. Linda Laura Sabadini, and Martina Rogato as W20 Sherpa Italy. They worked very hard and deserve our appreciation. And also, I think that it's not an easy work. I understand that it's not an easy task for W20 Italy, because this is in the middle of the crisis of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we were attending this W20 summit for 3 days, and I think it gives us a better lesson, especially for Indonesia, because we will host our presidency next year in Indonesia, and we are pleased to host our presidency W20 Summit Indonesia next year, hopefully in Bali, because we want to all the delegations to understand about Indonesia culture and also how we proceed with this W20 Summit. But at the same time, I'm really thankful that we got to learn from W20 Italy. And it's an amazing opportunity for Indonesia to have the W20 Summit hosted in Indonesia for our next presidency next year. Due to the consideration of what happened in 20 countries, we have to keep priorities and recover together and recover stronger. So we are following the theme of the G20 theme of Indonesia, which is recover together and recover stronger, because of the loss of the economic losses and also the life